This is the story of the Icebergs painting, a masterpiece that was lost for over 100 years. It starts in an old house in South Manchester that once belonged to a famous railway pioneer, Sir Edward Watkin, the last of the railway kings. Watkin lived and died here at Rose Hill, a magnificent villa where his guests included 3 Prime Ministers and Charles Dickens. Rose Hill outside looks very much as it did in Watkin's day, and this is the doorway that all of those famous people went through. The beautiful carved staircase looked like this in Sir Edward's day. This is the wall where the icebergs hung for 116 years and was thought to be lost. Sarah Askport and Victoria Puzelnik are students at the Manchester Enterprise Academy in Middleshaw. They are a group researching the life of Sir Edward Watkin. As a part of their project, they went to an interview with a very special lady, Mair. It was Mair who discovered the icebergs still hanging, and more than 100 years at the top of the stairs in Rose Hill. This is what she told them.
Well, I didn't find it. It was very much in situ when we moved into Rose Hill, and you couldn't miss it because it was on the landing outside the area we lived in.
So why did it interest you, this big painting?
Well, as you can see, I like pictures. I mean, my walls are covered in pictures. And I was going off to America, and we went to the Museum of Fine Art in Chicago, where it had a lot of impressionist pictures. And Edwin Church's, I think there were a few of his there, you know, the smaller ones.
Yeah. So when you went to America, you found out that there was like a kind of style of that painting that was also there?
He did vast landscapes of various, I think, sunsets and seascapes and things like that.
Thank you, Sarah. When you made inquiries about the painting, did you think that someone would be interested enough to come all the way from other countries, especially the USA?
When I found out that it was reasonably valuable, though I didn't know how much it was worth or anything like that, I'm not going to presume to tell you that I knew that it was going to be a very valuable painting. I decided to see if we could sell it, because I had a project in mind for the money. So I asked our head of, our director of social services, if I could sell it. And he said, certainly, Mrs. Baulch, you can sell it. But he said, I don't think you'll get the money, very much for it. Anyway, it really escalated from there. I corresponded with the director of the museum in Chicago, and he, with a colleague who was quite a well-known man, he had a big newspaper business. They came over and stayed and dilly-dallied a bit about whether it was entirely genuine or whether it had been added to, or anyway. By that time then, Manchester Art Gallery sent somebody up from Sotheby's, and he authenticated it straight away, so it was removed from Rose Hill under guard, I may add. though it had been hanging, as though it was not worth very much. And eventually sent over to America to be sold.
Did you trust the people from America?
Did I trust them?
Yes.
Well, I had no reason not to trust them. Whether they were up to valuing it correctly, that's another matter. And they seemed genuine. They even took us out to dinner. They were very nice people. But they knew that they were whether they were up to the job of valuing it or authenticating it, that's a different matter. I'm going back a long time now.
When they came to valuing it, how did you react when they told you about the painting's worth?
Well, they didn't really value it. They said that they would transport it back to America and they would value it there. But that was Chicago, not New York, where it was finally sold.
And did you let them take the painting with you?
No. It never left no. As soon as social services had got in touch with the Manchester Art Gallery, they took over.
What do you think about the whole story of the iceberg and how you took part in it?
Well, it was quite exciting at the time. It didn't turn out as I wanted it to, but that's a different matter. Because we had envisaged being able to sell it and buy a sort of derelict property in the country where the boys could go out for weekends, spend some time doing it up and living in the country, because a lot of them had nothing to do with the countryside, being Manchester boys or... But when it came under the jurisdiction of Manchester, it all was taken out of our hands.
So, what happened to the cottage you were planning to build?
Oh, well, that went... it was a pipe dream and it didn't come off.
So, how did you get the painting from down from the wall? Because it must have been on some massive screws.
Well, it was. Our housemasters and some boys unscrewed it and brought it downstairs very gingerly. In fact, it nearly went through one of the banisters. The banister. Oh, yeah, can you imagine? But it was in remarkably good condition, that picture. I mean, there was talk that it had darts thrown at it, but that wasn't so. It was in such good condition.
How did you clean this painting? Or how did people clean this painting? Or was it just...
It was just dusted.
Did you attend the auction?
I wish. No, I didn't, no.
And the opening of the exhibition at the Dallas Museum?
Yes, I was invited to the exhibition, went to the opening at Dallas, but I didn't go. But I did go and see the picture when it was in London. And it had a room to itself. It was beautiful.
So, how did you find out about the final price?
Oh, it was big news. Television, newspapers.
When you say it was on the news, I'm sure loads of people have heard about it. How did your boss and the people, the social workers, react? Did they say anything in particular?
I think everybody was elated that that it had fetched so much money. Well, Manchester would certainly have been very pleased to have had a scoop like that land in their laps when they just thought there was a grimy old picture hanging in one of their homes doing nothing.
Well, would you like to add anything?
No.
Thank you very much for
It's a pleasure.
Hi, my name is Ella and this is my friend Katie. We're both 11 and attending the Wild Zone on a Thursday to take part in a project about Sir Edward Watkin. Wild Zone becomes a World of Watkin zone for this project.
As a part of this project, we have used Minecraft to build Rose Hill Mansion where he lived and other places linked to Sir Edward Watkin. We have done some spray painting art and we are working with an author to make a children's book about a film. We are so glad that you have agreed to do this interview so we can use it as part of our film and our research into Sir Edward Watkin.
Today we're hoping to ask you some questions about the Icebergs painting. We know a little bit, but we want to know some more.
What is your role at the Dallas Museum of Art?
My role here at the Dallas Museum of Art is curator of American paintings. So basically, Edwin Church's Icebergs is a painting that falls under my area that I research about, and also I manage it as part of my collection.
How long did it take to paint the Icebergs painting?
How long did it take him to paint it? That's a tricky question, because he actually, in the summer of 1859, for a whole month, he rented a schooner and went up to Newfoundland and Labrador off the coast of Canada. And he spent that whole month going out in a smaller boat to do sketches of the various icebergs he saw. And he came back in the fall with 100 oil sketches that he would later use to basically create the painting. And so the painting isn't really of a specific place, it's really more a sort of a conglomeration, a blending of all of those impressions that he gathered in his oil sketches. But after he did all those oil sketches, he let it sit for a year because he had another great big painting that he was working on that had to be debuted the following June of 1860. So then he returned in the fall of 1860 and worked on the icebergs through the fall and into the winter of 61. So, you can say he actually worked on the painting of it for maybe about 6 months, but all of that previous work he'd done up in Labrador and Newfoundland for a month was really the seeds that he sowed towards making this grand painting.
Why do you think Sir Edward Watkin bought a painting from an American artist unknown in England?
Well, there's two answers to that again. Sir Edward Church, even though he was an American, he had really quite a following in Britain, because he had exhibited in London in the 1850s and the 1860s, of course, and he had had quite a bit of success with some of his other great pictures. These enormous pictures he always referred to as great pictures. And so he already had familiarity with the art market, and a lot of people were very interested in his work in Britain. And why did Sir Edward Watkin buy it? Basically, for him, Sir Edward Watkin, because of his role in the railways, not only in Britain, but also in Canada, essentially that took him across to the North American continent, and he worked on the Grand Trunk Railway for Canada, which is today the Canadian Pacific Railway. And so that's from Atlantic coast to Pacific coast. And he basically had made a trip across the Atlantic, and he actually recorded in his diary the experience of seeing icebergs in the North Atlantic. And he particularly wrote about seeing them late in the day when the subdued light around sunset would make all of the colors of the icebergs come out. And that's a really interesting point, because when Church did this painting, he decided to portray the icebergs late in the day towards sunset when all of the colors come out. So the assumption can be probably, we can basically try to assume that Sir Edward Watkin, when he saw the icebergs exhibited in London, that it brought back that moment when he saw the actual icebergs in the North Atlantic in 1861.
Can you tell us anything else about the artist Frederick Church?
Frederick Church was really the most important second-generation member of the Hudson River School of American Landscape Painting. And an interesting aspect about his work is that it's very romantic, or what many art historians would refer to as the sublime. Sublime meaning it's very beautiful, but it's also, the circumstances within the painting are also threatening. And Frederick Church was the most important and the first student that studied under Thomas Cole, who was an English-born painter who immigrated to America. And Thomas Cole was obviously very familiar with the British painters like John Martin or James W. Turner, who had all these wonderful sort of color and lights and drama in their paintings. And so that's sort of something that he as a teacher passed on to Frederick Church. And Frederick Church was a master of conveying this sort of romantic sort of aspect in his paintings, rather operatic almost in a way, very dramatic. And that's the sort of thing you get in the icebergs.
How well known is Sir Edward Watkin in America?
He's not very well known, unfortunately. This painting is probably one of the key things for which he would be known here, but he takes second seat, of course, to the artist in the painting itself. He may be more well known in Canada, to the north of us, because of his role in creating the Canadian Pacific Railway coast to coast.
What do you think fundamentally think about the painting?
Could you repeat that, please?
What do people in America think about the painting?
This painting in the Dallas Museum of Art is really one of its key masterpieces. We refer to it as our Mona Lisa. And there are many people who come specifically to see the icebergs. It is what is referred to in the museum world as a destination picture, where people basically go to specific museums to see particular works. For anyone who loves the work of Frederick Church, a really great 19th century American landscape painters, this particular painting is a must-see. And it is very popular with the public. We are loath to let it go for exhibitions because it's so important to us. And as you can see, it's a huge painting. In its frame, we're talking about maybe about 8 by 11 feet, and it weighs 425 pounds. And so when loan requests come in, we really have to think very hard about letting it go on loan.
What inspired the artist to make the painting?
Frederick Church essentially was, you could almost call him an explorer artist. He had already done previous paintings of exotic locations in South America. In fact, in 1853, he did a painting of Niagara, and in 1857 he did one of basically called The Heart of the Andes that he did in South America. And it was thought that he wanted to do sort of like the opposite end, the opposite pole, and therefore he went north. But I think the other aspect about this particular period in time is that this was a moment of exploration by many explorers, particularly from England, who were searching for the Northwest Passage that would take them from the Atlantic up over through Canada over to the Pacific coast. And there were quite a few expeditions that were mounted, and some of them which ended rather tragically. And it was not too long before that period, really only about maybe 12 to 15 years before Church went to Labrador and Newfoundland to do his research for this painting, that the expedition of Sir John Franklin perished in the icy north of Canada during an expedition that was launched in the mid-1840s. And so there were still hopes that Sir John Franklin's men, maybe that they could be found, and many search parties had been sent out. And so there was a great deal of drama and curiosity and hopes behind their being rediscovered. And so there was this real sort of interest at that period of time in the Arctic, in the North, and in Arctic exploration. So that was really, I think, part of the zeitgeist of that time period.
Did the painting get damaged on the way to the museum, and how did it get there?
How did it get here? Oh wow, that's a really tricky story. Of course you know the story that Mair Baulch has told you about the discovery of the painting at Rose Hill. The painting had been searched for many years. Many art historians, American art historians, knew that Church's great picture had been sold in England, but then it had disappeared. And so they had no idea where to look for it, and two researchers went over to London to do some very deep research, and they got very close to Rose Hill, but didn't really get their foot in the door. And so finally, when Mair Baulch brought it to the attention of the Art Institute of Chicago, and the Institute expressed immediate interest in buying it, and then the Manchester City Council became involved. That was part of the story. But when he asked for the guys at Sotheby's in London to come up and take a look at the painting, and the fellow there knew that he had something very special, that this painting was very special. And that's when he called in his colleagues in New York, who were specialists in American art, who immediately saw this painting, recognized it for the long-lost Icebergs by Edwin Church. And it was shipped from Rose Hill to New York, where it was cleaned up, a frame was put on it, and then it was put at auction in October of 1979. And this painting set the record for, at that time, for any work of art, with one exception. It was an impressionist work of art. But this set the record not only for an American artwork, but also, of course, for Edwin Church himself when it sold for $2.5 million. That doesn't sound like a lot of money today when things are going for $100 million. Back then, the market was more modest, let's say, in its pricing. But so essentially, there was a couple here from Dallas who was in New York, and they went to see the painting, and they were just really super impressed by it, and they decided to bid for it at auction, and they bid by phone, so they weren't present. And the price climbed and climbed and climbed, and finally they secured it. And then they realized that they didn't really have a wall big enough to hang it on. And so a week after the auction, they asked our director, Harry Parker III, to come see them. They had something of interest that they wanted to discuss with him that would be for the good of the museum. And so he went over to see them, and they said, well, we bought the Icebergs last week, but we don't have a place to hang it. Would you like to have it at the museum? And first it was a loan, but as soon as it arrived, he changed it to a gift. And that is how basically it came specifically to the Dallas Museum of Art. It was a really wonderful gift, a very expensive gift, by this couple who asked to remain anonymous. In fact, their identity was not revealed until 2010, just 6 years ago, after Lamar Hunt's death. So it was Lamar and Norma Hunt, the couple, who purchased the painting and gave it to the museum.
Did it get damaged on the way to the museum?
Not on the way to the museum. I think while it was still at Rose Hill, one of the boys who lived in the in Rose Hill when it was a boys' school. I think one of them had carved some initials in it or something like that when it was hanging way up in this back stairway of the house. But that was about the only thing. Basically, it was in really great condition. It was just extremely filthy. So once it was cleaned up and the little damages of the initials were painted out, it was really perfectly fine.
What do you personally think about the painting?
What do I personally think about it? I think it is really one of, well, it's certainly is to me is the greatest painting within this American collection. It is one of the key paintings of American art, particularly at this period around the war. It is really almost a part of a series of paintings that he did during the war period. And I think it is wonderful. It really is like a wonderful work of opera. It just sings, and it's big, it's impressive and bold. And the way that Church painted it, his brushwork, the colors he includes in it, they just project this wonderful sort of atmosphere. You feel that you can almost walk into it. In fact, the way he painted it, he wanted you to feel like you're standing on the ice in the foreground. And I think another thing that's worth pointing out about the painting, when he first painted it here in the United States, and he exhibited it in New York in 1861, the exhibition opened just about 12 days after the Civil War started here. And essentially, he was very patriotic to the North, and so he changed the name from the Icebergs to the North. And when he exhibited in New York, everyone came to see it. They paid 25 cents a piece in 1861 to see this painting. They were like lined up around the block to see the latest great picture by Edwin Church. And he donated all that money to a special fund that would benefit the families and widows of soldiers during the Civil War. While everyone loved it, no one bought it. And then it was sent to Boston, about 6 hours, by today's measure, 6 hours east of New York City, and it was shown there in 1862. Everyone loved it, but no one bought it. The economy, everyone was sort of uneasy about the economy because of the Civil War. And so finally he thought, I'll send it to England because I've had success there when I've shown my other great pictures. And so he decided to ship it to England, and it was shown in London in 1863. But before he sent it, he changed the name back to the Icebergs because he realized that England was more sympathetic to the South. And that was Church. He was a real businessman. He was a showman. He had his finger on the pulse of the public. And he knew that that would be a better way to approach an English market. And the other thing he did before he shipped it over, he added the mast of the ship in the foreground on the ice, which basically would make people in England think about the lost voyage of Sir John Franklin. And so again, he was tapping into a British audience in particular. And so when he shipped it over and it was shown in London, it opened, I think, at Garden Gallery on New Bond Street. And basically it was interesting because the people who came to the opening were many of the great explorers in Britain at the time. And also attending was the widow of Sir John Franklin, Lady Franklin.
Thank you for the interview. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Could you say that one more time, please?
Thanks for the interview.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. I'm really glad in your interest, and just please know that this is really an incredibly important painting to us, wonderfully beautiful, and it's really great to share some of the story with you and really to know if you're interested in it. And it's a real great tribute to, I think, to the foresight, I think the taste of Sir Edward Watkin, that he looked at this wonderful painting and it really spoke to him and to his own experiences. And he preserved it in a way for a long time, and which makes it possible to be here with us. And so thank you for your interest too.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think one other important aspect about this painting, possibly for Sir Edward Watkin was when in his involvement with the Grand Trunk Railroad in Canada, today again the Canadian Pacific Railway, he basically established that connection between the Atlantic and Pacific. And I think in some ways this painting expressed for him that what he had accomplished in Canada was really the inheritor of the great explorations to find the Northwest Passage. It basically meant that there would be no more need to explore, to find that Northwest Passage, or for men to die in the attempt to do so. And I think in a sense he saw himself as the great inheritor of that, and that he had helped solve that problem. And that's another reason why this painting spoke to him. It was a symbol for him of what was accomplished by him in Canada.
Hi Sue, my name's Lisa and I'm one of the teachers here at the WOW Zone. We just wondered if there was anything that you wanted to ask the two girls at all, if there were any questions that you had about the project.
Okay, let's see. Now what is your interest in this project? Why did you want to work on this project?
Well, I came along to spray painting workshop that was based on this, and we did a painting of the icebergs, and then we came along to the Minecraft workshop and kind of like came to the sessions after that.
I came to this project because I wanted to know a little bit more about Sir Edward Watkin and some of the places where he lived and what he made and things.
Yeah, well, he has a really great legacy. I mean, not just because of the icebergs here, but in Canada, of course, but as I understand, in Britain as well, with the railways that he put in place there. And he was really quite an innovative individual, and so he was really quite important. So I think your project, what you're working on, is really a wonderful thing in trying to preserve the memory of Sir Edward Watkin. So it's a really great project. You know, I'm very interested in it too, and so I'll be really interested to see the final product of what you create between all the interviews and all of the images that you put together, etc. I think I'm really looking forward to that. So I wish you all luck with your future work on this and in making the finished product. And I really look forward to seeing what you achieve.